Yeah, let's just go. Here we go. Okay, right. Well, dear listener, here it is. A Storm of Swords, Bran II. We basically keep following Team Bran on its journey north, wherein they will encounter other POV characters, or maybe just see them from afar. But that's for later. Later chapters. For now, they just keep getting lost. But that's all right, because whenever they don't know where they happen to be, all they have to do is just wait for a clear night, spot the right constellation, and they'll know the way. And you know what? This is the first instance of actual constellations mentioned in this universe. The star constellation Bran and company rely on is called the Ice Dragon. Later on, we will encounter other constellations like the Crone's Lantern or the Galley. But this, dear listener, I believe this is the first mention of a proper constellation. It was in a different Bran POV chapter that we learned that in this universe, people do observe the stars. The Maesters observe the stars, because who else? By using a telescope type thing, which is called a mirrorish eye, because A, it's made in mirror, and B, it's got a set of lenses in it, and the specific Bran POV chapter was Bran 7, the last Bran chapter in a Game of Thrones, Book 1, where we saw Maester Lewin observing the comet, the famous comet that everyone saw as a sign of their own destiny in A Clash of Kings, kind of like a Rorschach test. And Lewin was there, busy observing the comet from Bran's room, while Bran was watching new Winterfell recruits being trained by Sir Roderick down in the courtyard. But there was no mention of actual constellations back there. Now we get an expansion on that aspect of world building, again in a Bran chapter. So the Ice Dragon is the way Team Bran wants to go, because the blue star in it points north. Next time we get constellations mentioned will be in a Davos chapter. You will be pleased to know, because who else but an expert navigator, right? And as I said, the Galley, the Crone's Lantern, which the latter, I guess, is what worshippers of the faith of the Seven call them, because the name given to the same constellation by people of different persuasions is unknown. Anyway, enough astronomy for now. Constellations, after all, do make Bran think of Osha, who taught him the names of the stars to guide his way, huh? What a great, if unlikely, apparent figure, this Osha. Have I mentioned how fond I am of that character? Osha. And Bran is wondering where she's at, with Rickon and Shaggy Dog. Maybe, who knows, maybe safe in White Harbor, eating eels and fish and hot crab pie with Fat Lord Manderley. Because whenever you think Manderley, you're thinking, oh yeah, he lay down, sets out a nice spread, doesn't he? Or maybe they're warming themselves at the last hearth before the Great John's fires. We'll find out more about these characters' whereabouts in a Dance with Dragons, actually. But for now, Bran is still thinking, well, whatever. Any destination is better than where we happen to be right now. Unless, of course, one were to end up in a certain island populated by cannibals. Cough, cough. That was close to a spoiler. So I'll shut up right now. Mira is also getting fed up with climbing up and down mountains. She hates mountains today. She loved them yesterday because they were a nice change from the marshes where she grew up. Today she hates them and loves them, and hates them and loves them. And Bran is puzzled. How can you both love and hate them at the same time? And Jojen, of course, of course, has to give it his own wise and enigmatic spin, a la Little Grandpa. Well, if even ice can burn like fire, then why not, I suppose. Ice and fire, roll credits. Hey. Also, the trouble is, these mountains are a bit bare. So finding food has become tricky, even for the Reeds with their scout, Boy Scout, Girl Scout training. In fact, given that they haven't encountered anybody along the road, Mira wonders if anyone at all lives around here, which is a great opportunity for George R. R. Martin to populate this part of the world with some great and minor houses, clans, actually, which will become relevant later. There are, of course, the Umbers, east of the King's Road, and the Walls, west of the mountains along the Bay of Ice, Harclays, back behind the hills, the Knots and Liddles and Norries, and even some Flints up in the high places. And these are all sworn men to House Stark, not technically lords as such, although we learned that Eddard did address them as lords, mainly out of politeness, and they, in turns, addressed him not as Lord Stark, but as the Ned, the same style they used among themselves, because like Theo Wall, the head of the Walls, was simply known as the Wall among his own people. So yeah, there's that. Theo Wall being one of the Northmen who went out there to the Tower of Joy in Dorne way back. This, more on that later. More on that in this very same commentary, actually. And Bran, Jojen, Mira, and Hodor do eventually bump into one such mountain dude, a Liddle, to be precise. And I suspect this little guy knows or recognizes Bran, or at least has a hunch. Okay, here's how it goes down. First, Bran informs the group that they have been closely watched. He has seen it through the eyes of his direwolf Summer, because warging. Not that there's any, warlike intent, The mountain clansmen are simply keeping an eye on their sheep, goats, and whatnot. There's none of that, like, oi, you're on our turf. Gotta pay the toll, mate. There's none of that. And then on a stormy and windy night, how's that bed writing sample everyone always quotes? It was a dark and stormy night. That's it. Yeah, that's the one. Which I think really, I think it has become an example of bad writing, predominantly because it was used and abused by Snoopy, Peanuts. Anyway, so on a bad writing sort of night, Team Bran has to find shelter in a cave. Metaphors aplenty here. And they realize the place is already occupied by some dude who's already lit a fire. And he goes, yeah, hello, I'll get your asses over here. I'm not going to bite. Here, there's enough room for all of us. And you're welcome to some of my oat cakes and blood pudding. Yummy. I hope you're not vegans, huh? I've got some ale too. Let's party, man. Because none of us has to drive, right? Yeah. So, they all get cozy and chatty. How's your father? Blah, blah, blah. And the man is constantly saying, you know what? I'll tell you what. These parts were better when there was a Stark in Winterfell. Wink, wink. Yeah? Isn't that right? Young boy, who's obviously just a random young boy and not at all one of the Stark household. Here, have another sausage. But Bran keeps zipped on the subject, which I think is a wise policy. Surprisingly, is Jojen, who maybe says a little more than he ought to. He might have had a few sips of that ale. He goes, yeah, well, dear man, the wolves will return, my good man. Oh, yeah. How do you know that? Why, I dreamed it. Yeah, well, mate, I dream a lot of crazy stuff that don't necessarily come true in the morning. And Jojen, who always has to sound like the smartest guy in the room. He just goes, yeah, well, there's dreams and dreams, my good old man. But the guy is the guy who may or may not be a little. He carries on, yeah, well, be it as it may, until that happens, these parts up north are no longer safe, you know? What with those Bolton guys roaming around, sent by the bastard Ramsay, randomly threatening people and offering silver for any information pertaining to certain wolfskin and other walking dead. And yes, if you immediately caught the reference to Bran and Rickon when you read Walking Dead, congrats to you, dear listener, because the first time I came across that, I swear for a millisecond I thought, what was that? Is Ramsay Bolton hunting the others, the whites? What's that about? And then I got angry at myself at how dumb I can be sometimes, you know, because no, it's obviously Bran and Rickon, whom everyone thinks, you know, crossed off the list of characters, courtesy of Theon Greyjoy. But Ramsay, of course, you know, expert in switcheroo trickery, knows better, having had the idea himself. You might remember, way back in A Clash of Kings. In my defense, well, Bran doesn't literally walk, which is ironic in a cruel sort of way. Anyway, so the point being that armies with the Bolton sigil are after Bran and Rickon up north, while coincidentally, until recently, armies with the Bolton sigil were after Arya in the Riverlands. Make of that what you will. And all the time, the man keeps staring at Bran, you know, when he's saying these things, as if to say, look, young man, I know who you are, chill, all right? Your secret is safe with me. Wink, wink. Nudge, nudge. Anyway, say no more. Also, one more piece of advice, the man continues, if you don't mind, if I may be so bold, I wouldn't go to the wall either. The wall, you know, that big wall, 700 feet of ice wall, yeah. Because if that is indeed where you're headed, they really do give out a lot more information than they should under the circumstances. But yeah, well, I wouldn't go there either, because I'll tell you what, there too, up there on the wall, you know, all the trustworthy people who used to be in charge appear to have vanished. Lord Commander Mormont having taken most of the night watch from Castle Black and what is it, Shadow Tower, deep into uncharted territory, and no one has heard from these guys in a while. He's very well informed, this little guy, huh? See, there's a whole network of people. A guy who may or may not be a little. We don't yet know. Anyway, they all fall asleep, and when they wake up in the morning after, for a change, they don't wake up only to realize that they have been robbed, gagged, abused, sold for coin, harvested for organs, and none of that. Yeah, no, in fact, the man has left, leaving behind a sausage and some oatcakes. Yeah, see? Decent people still exist. And Bran makes a mental note to reward these liddles one day. Now, he's now certain the man was a liddle because the oatcakes were wrapped in a green-white coat, handkerchief, cloak type thing. I don't know. Cloth. Yeah, cloth. We're going to go with cloth. Which happen to be the colors of the Liddle sigil. Later we find out two things. A, Bran can't seem to warg with eagles as much as he tries. He sees one soaring up there and he focuses real hard, but nothing happens. So his powers aren't quite there yet. And B, Hodor's real name isn't actually Hodor, surprisingly. Old Nan once told Bran, and he tells us now, he tells his traveling companions, that his actual name is Walder. Hodor is just a random word he keeps saying. But is it random, though? We'll just have to read on, I guess. So anyway, our heroes proceed on their journey. This is a good time to remind ourselves that they're seeking out a certain three-eyed crow who's supposed to teach Bran how to fly. There, let me reread that sentence here. Yeah, I wrote it down in my notes. So, just to make sure that I didn't screw it up and cock up any of that. It's literally, they are seeking out a certain three-eyed crow who's supposed to teach Bran how to fly. Seriously. How much of that is metaphorical? How much is literal? All they have to go on is vague visions, which both Bran and Jojen have, though in different forms. You know, Bran is kind of like warging, doing his thing with a wolf, and Jojen's got his green sight. Is that what it's called? And that's pretty much it. Not even the location, okay, north of the wall, you know, I mean, that doesn't really narrow it down a lot, does it? Nor did this three-eyed crow character bother to drop them a pin, did he? Or did it? Or did she? We don't know. Three-eyed crow. It. We're going to go with it. Whatever or whoever this three-eyed crow character MacGuffin might be, we'll find out. No spoilers. There will be a chapter where lots of this enigmatic stuff will be revealed. Be it as it may, as has been pointed out by many readers, this is the part of the saga that kind of resembles The Lord of the Rings. Not just because the characters move from A to B, you know, that trope of The Lord of the Rings, which has already been beaten to death, among other people, by Kevin Smith. You know, I don't know if you've ever watched Clerks 2. At some point, that character, forgot his name, the crazy one, the unreliable fella, he summarizes The Lord of the Rings thusly. He goes, okay, are you ready? Here's the Fellowship of the Ring. And he walks from one spot of the room to the other. And then, and here's the Two Towers. And he walks a little more. And then finally, and are you ready? Here's the Return of the King. At which point he walks a few more paces and throws an object on the floor. Then goes, meh, shrugs his shoulders. That's it. That's the Lord of the Rings, according to him. No, but really, these Bran chapters remind one of the Lord of the Rings in that, yes, it is a long journey towards more and more perilous lands, but with a quest that may or may not succeed. And to drive the point home, George R.R. Martin even gives us the Dead Marshes. You know, an enchanted place where lots of knights, warriors, and whatnot lie at the bottom of the swampy water, ponds and bogs they call them, because bog devils. And they're still, you know, they lie there at the bottom, still in their steel or bronze armor or whatever metal it may be made of. And it's Jojen who brings up the subject. He goes, many have tried to conquer our land in the neck, Greywater. He goes, Andals and Iron Men and Freys and other fools. All these proud warriors who set out to conquer Greywater, and not one of them could find it. Because it floats. It's like a floating castle. You know, resting on an island that floats. Imagine that. We haven't actually seen it yet. Will we ever? And no one could find it. They ride into the neck, but not back out. And sooner or later, they blunder into the bogs and sink beneath the weight of all the steel and drown there in their armor. And that gruesome image does give Bran the chills, but it's a sensation he enjoys, which I guess is the standard description of anyone, among whom yours truly, who happen to enjoy horror movies and literature. So they talk about the marshes and knights, because Bran insists, he says he wants Mira to tell a story about such stuff, knights. Tell a story about knights. I'm sure you know one of those stories with about chivalry and whatnot. You know how it is. It's a long journey. They're tired of playing I Spy with My Little Eye. So Mira goes, all right, you want a story about knights? I'll give you a story about a certain knight. And dear listener, if you have made it at least until the end of this chapter, you know that this story in question has Mira's and Jojen's father as protagonist, Howland Reed. Variously described as the late Eddard Stark's best buddy, really. The little Crannog man, that's him. And to think that we haven't even met him yet. We haven't really been to the neck as such. But he was responsible. Let's remind ourselves. Howland Reed was responsible for no less than saving Ned's life at the Battle of the Tower of Joy. Well, battle, 10 people in total. So I guess combat is a more fitting word. Combat or just outside the Tower of Joy. Although the way Ned tells the story is, or used to anyway, is open to interpretations. Here, you tell me what you think, dear listener. This is how Bran, back in A Clash of Kings, recalls his father Ned telling the story. In Bran III, Ned starts by describing the most formidable opponent he had to face in that battle, that combat. The finest knight I ever saw was Sir Arthur Dane, who fought with a blade called Dawn, forged from the heart of a fallen star, meteorite. Then, cool, that's kind of cool. They called him the Sword of the Morning. He was, of course, a member of the Knights Guard, and he would have killed me, but for Howland Reed. Father had gotten sad then, and he would say no more. Bran wished he had asked him what he meant. Oh, it still gives me the chills when I read these passages. Clash of Kings, Bran III. Poignant, huh? And the story of that battle was already described in detail in the final Eddard chapter from A Game of Thrones. Howland and Eddard being the only survivors between the 7 Northmen on one side and 3 knights of the King's Guard on the other. So all we have is bits and pieces scattered across 3 different books. And now Mira is about to tell a story featuring Howland Reed when he was still, I guess, just a little older than these kids now, right now. Except that she's all enigmatic, and she changes names of characters here and there. The story takes place at the tourney of Harrenhal. Gosh, was anyone not at that tourney? So we already had a description of that tourney in a flashback in the same book, Jaime 2 POV chapter. Significant day for him, because that was when King Aerys made him a member of the King's Guard. Okay, well, let's get on with the story. Title, The Night of the Laughing Tree. Are you sitting comfortably? Then I shall begin. This is the story of a curious Cranogman with quasi-magical powers, talking to trees, running on leaves, making castles disappear. The last one I kind of buy. I buy that, because actually, yeah, the Reeds inhabit this castle that no one can find because it's on a floating island, and we've been over it already. Anyway, having decided that he had learned all he could learn in the neck, he traveled to the island of Faces, right in the middle of the lake known as God's Eye. So he spent a winter with those mystical people everybody calls the Green Men. It hasn't been explained why. Are they green? They paint themselves green. They were mentioned literally in the first Catelyn chapter in Book 1, the Isle of Faces, where the Green Men kept their silent watch. And that's all we were told. Will we ever find out more about them? Maybe, but not in this story, because in this story, we jump to the end of winter, right at the beginning of what everybody calls the false spring. At which point, Howland, having learned whatever he set out to learn from the Green Men, he got back on his boat and arrived at Harrenhal, which is, of course, on the northern bay coast of the God's Eye, where the tourney was in full swing. Everyone was there, the king himself, his son, the dragon prince. The white swords had come to welcome a new brother to their ranks. Yeah, the Storm Lord was on hand. Let me turn the page. The Storm Lord was on hand, and the Rose Lord as well, you see. The great Lion of the Rock had quarrelled with the king and stayed away, but many of his bannermen and knights attended all the same. See, you can figure out who's who, even though Mira doesn't call each character by their given names. And yes, someone was absent, actually, at the Harrenhal tourney. Tywin Lannister had remained at Casterly Rock, having quarrelled with the king. Anyway, so the little Cranogman goes, "Oh my God, this is awesome! A tourney! I so want to be part of it. I mean, the party, really, because I'm no good at jousting, but, all the jet set is here, the celebrities, wow." So as he's walking around, checking out the tents and figuring a way to crash the party, he's intercepted by 3 young squires who give him a hard time immediately. "Oi, mate, you frog eater. We can tell you're a frog eater from the neck by your outfit. You don't belong here. Get lost." And they proceed to beat the crap out of him. He's a little Cranogman. As much as he tries to defend himself, it's 3 of them. So upon hearing this bit of the story, Bran immediately goes, yeah, you know what? These squires, I bet they must have been Freys. I can tell by the attitude. And the way they behave towards you people from the neck. Whoops, did I just say you people? Sorry, I didn't mean that with a racist undertone. You know what I meant. Anyway, so Mira carries on and tells us about the next chapter, the next character to enter the story, and it's none other than Lyanna Stark, or is it pronounced Lyanna? Lyanna sounds so less cool to me. Anyway, because Lyanna's, I don't know, more incisive. Anyway, so she's one of the several characters in this saga who, Lyanna Stark, Ned Stark's sister to Benjen and Brandon. Anyway, while not having any official screen time, she's already dead when we by the time we open our view on the world of Ice and Fire in the prologue of book 1. So she has no screen time aside from flashbacks, but it's one of those characters that are nonetheless super important. Another one being Rhaegar Targaryen. In fact, I guess you could say that Lyanna Stark is the Helen of Troy in this series. The woman whose quote-unquote abduction sparked a whole war. What was Helen of Troy's definition? The face that launched 1,000 ships. In many ways, that is Lyanna Stark, But one thing at a time. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. So Lyanna, who is simply introduced as a young she-wolf on 2 legs by Mira, she's all pissed off at the treatment of Howland Reed, and she goes, "Oi, you kids should be ashamed of yourselves. This is one of my father's bannermen. I guess he must have had the Cranogman from the neck tattooed on his forehead, because you'd think that spending a whole winter among the Green Men, and we're talking years, because winter, we're not talking just months in this universe. That would change a young man, right? At the very least in his outfit. But no, everyone recognizes him for who he is and the house he belongs to. So I guess he must have put his shirt of bronze scales and he must have put his 3-pronged spear and then your leather shield, all of that stuff in a trunk on the day he arrived at the Isle of Faces, and then pulled them back out of that trunk the day he left, I guess. So yeah, this is my outfit for the real world, I guess, because that's how everybody recognizes him. So anyway, Lyanna is all like, yeah, don't you dare be rude to this little guy or I'll have your asses whipped. I know your dad's, and yada, yada, yada. So be gone. So the bullies disperse. Lyanna helps Howland back on his feet, and she's all like, join the party, mate. We'll get you a proper outfit so you can blend in, yeah? And Howland goes, yeah, no, I wouldn't like to impose, blah, blah, blah. But Lyanna's like, shut up and follow me. Because if you must remember one thing about Lyanna is that she's stubborn and wild. So not the kind of person who likely take no for an answer. Actually, one more thing about Lyanna that I should mention here. Speaking of wild, she scattered the bullies, not just with words, but with a tourney sword. That will be important later. Just remember, she's good at jousting. That ought to be borne in mind. Really good, apparently. So Lyanna introduces Howland to her brothers. Mira describes them as the wild wolf who led them, the quiet wolf beside him, and the pup, who was the youngest of the four. And these are Brandon, Eddard, a.k.a. Ned, and Benjen, respectively, who we guess must have been a child. Benjen, as we know, would later take the black, whereas Jamie, who was also around, he was just about to take the white. Is that of some significance? Bah. So Benjen goes, all right, mate, let's get you to wardrobe, yeah? See what we can find that fit you. You're a bit shorter than the average Stark, but there you go. So they all go to the feast, and they all have a blast. They're all there in Harrenhal Castle. The Barrow-down men and moose and bears and mermen. You see, all houses are described by their sigils, so it's not too difficult to figure out the families. And importantly, we get a scene where Rhaegar plays his usual silver harp. Dinner and a show, and I keep saying silver harp. I mean, is it really? I mean, does that really have a decent acoustic resonance? Silver? I don't know if an acoustic instrument should be made of silver. Maybe it's just gilded. I don't know. Anyway, so he plays the harp, and sings such a poignant, a sad and beautiful song that Lyanna ends up in tears. Benjen teases her for that, and Lyanna pours wine over his head. There, I told you she was wild. And I believe, along with many other readers, that this is a hint for us that really Lyanna was in love with Rhaegar. Casting some doubt over the official narrative that Rhaegar would later abduct Lyanna like a year later and proceed to have multiple sessions of non-consensual sex with her, despite the fact that Rhaegar was married to Elia Martell of Dorne with no fewer than 2 kids, and Lyanna was betrothed to Robert Baratheon. The theory being that Lyanna would later, a year later from this tourney at Harrenhal story, she would actually follow Rhaegar willingly, and that the sex would be very much consensual. So, yeah. That's one way to look at it. Oh, and speaking of Martell, a certain red snake is also mentioned among the attendees, and this is Oberyn Martell, Prince Oberyn. We haven't encountered him yet, but we heard him mentioned at a small council meeting in the previous Tyrion chapter. And also Olenna. Tyrell mentions him in the Sansa chapter. The Tyrell being still mad at him for having unhorsed and accidentally crippled Willas Tyrell at a tourney. Not this one, tourney at Harrenhal. a different one. Also, a griffin is mentioned, this one being John Connington. And if you're wondering, yes, this is the same griffin listed as one of 4 hands of the king in that chapter where Jaime reminisces about the men who succeeded his father Tywin as hands to King Aerys II. Ashara Dane is also there, Arthur Dane's sister, who has a bit of a dance with these 2 other guys. And even Ned Stark, who is said to having danced with her only because Brandon asked Ashara to invite Ned to dance. Ned being too shy to ask her. And, I find it funny to think of Ned Stark as a shy boy, I mean, yeah, a man of few words, yes, absolutely. But what, out of shyness? I don't know. But you know what else I think? And it just occurred to me recently. This tourney at Harrenhal took place in what is known as the false spring, And in a way, yeah, this really was a false spring, factually, for everybody. A time where everybody seemed to be happy for a while, but evil was lurking under the surface. And only a year later, it would all go to shit. I'm sorry, but that's how it is. What I'm saying is, it's no wonder Ned always went sad remembering Howland Reed. And it's also no wonder that Ned has never told Bran this story of the Harrenhal tourney. Because all the while, Jojen keeps saying, come on, bro. Come on, Bran, bro, dude. You must have heard this story like a zillion times from your dad. Surely your father must have told you. But no, of course not, because it was painful for Ned to recall a time when they all seemed happy, not knowing that tragedy was just around the corner. And the fact that this little Cranogman would end up saving Ned's life and then gently, pull his hand away from Lyanna's dead body in the Tower of Joy, saying, come on, man, it's time to go. I don't know about you, dear listener, but it chokes me up inside every time. Anyway, one thing at a time, because Mira's story isn't over. We still have to meet the titular Knight of the Laughing Tree. Who is this mysterious person, I wonder? Well, it's a knight. Yep, we know that much. He turns up at the tourney, even though this knight's name was not officially on the ledger initially. Enlisted at the last moment. Turns up at the tourney and beats the crap out of those same contestants that those 3 bullies squired for. There, incidentally, yeah, one of those 3 knights was indeed a Frey, we're told. So, who was the Knight of the Laughing Tree? Bran seems to have 0 doubts. He goes, yeah, it was the little Cranogman, I bet. Why, no one knew, Mira says. But the mystery knight was short of stature, and clad in ill-fitting armor made up of bits and pieces. The device upon his shield was a heart tree and of the old gods, a white weirwood with a laughing red face. So it could only have come from somewhere in the north. Maybe some spare bits and pieces from the Starks, luggage. I dare say. Now, what a proper, what do you call it, underdog story this is, yeah? But we should bear in mind that just a little earlier, Benjen did offer Howland some armor that could fit him so that he could joust. But, and this is important, Howland had thought to himself, nah, mate, no. I'm no good at this sort of thing. Can't even sit on a horse. We Reeds, we spend more time on boats than horses. And when you put this fact together with the notion, the fact that Lyanna was good at this sort of thing, you can see why so many readers embrace the theory that the Knight of the Laughing Tree was none other than Lyanna Stark, which would fit in with other bits of the story, not to mention explain why the Knight of the Laughing Tree would have to be in disguise, because, women were not allowed to take part in tourneys. It wasn't fair, but that was the way it was. So, what do you think about this theory? Huh? Does it have merits? Be it as it may, the other two knights defeated by one of them was a fray. I said that, and the other two were if you happen to be interested, were some dude from House Hay and another one from House Blount, as in Boros Blount. That's all I can say about these two houses. We don't know much else. And these two guys are described by Mira as the Pitchfork Knight and the Porcupine Knight, okay, respectively. Yeah, Blount, Porcupine, I seem to vaguely remember that. The latter combat, in fact, Porcupine, the latter combat, think about this, must have looked pretty cool on the blackboard, where it was announced in chalk. Imagine that. Next combat, Porcupine Tree. Yeah, you see what I did? All right. Anyway, so allow me to read the next bit verbatim from the text. A storm of sword. When his fallen foes sought to ransom horse and armor, the Knight of the Laughing Tree spoke in a booming voice. Okay, could it have been Lyanna? We don't know. Lyanna might have had a booming voice. Maybe the resonance from the armor, the helmet. The Knight of the Laughing Tree spoke in a booming voice through his helm. Well, there you go. Saying, no, teach your squires honor. That shall be ransom enough. Once the defeated knights chastised their squires sharply, their horses and armor were returned. Cool. Well, true underdog story. And so the little Cranogman's prayer was answered by the green men, or the old gods, or indeed the children of the forest. Who can say? And this is Mira ending the story. So Mira ends the story. Yeah, that's and Bran, of course, acts like a child his age would, and he goes, "Yeah, great story, but you know what? It would have been even better if the Knight of the Laughing Tree had been the champion of the whole tourney, and if he had killed everybody. And also, if I had been that knight, you know what I would have done? I would have done this, I would have done that. Children when they hear stories, they really get, oh, bless them. So, yeah. Oh, yeah, I forgot to tell you, the ultimate champion of the tourney, this is important, the ultimate champion of the tourney was the Dragon Prince, Rhaegar, yeah. And though really, I don't know how much of it was fixed, because, if the son of the king is competing, he has to win, right? I know for a fact that Ned said as much to Robert when the latter, was adamant to compete in a melee at the Hand's tourney. This is way back in book 1. Of course, Ned Stark was alive, so it was book 1. He said, he said to Robert, come on, man, come on, don't be ridiculous. They will let you win. You're the king. For God's sake, it's all right there. Look in Eddard 6. It goes like this. The king rose to his feet, his face flushed, because he was angry but also drunk. Are you telling me those prancing cravens will let me win? I don't do a very good... I don't know. I forgot the name of the actor who plays Robert in Game of Thrones. It's very Shakespearean, but also kind of it wouldn't be out of place in Blackadder season 1. So anyway, yeah, you're telling me those prancing cravens will let me win? For a certainty, Ned said. And Sir Barristan Selmy bowed his head in silent accord. So you tell me, is it likely that, everybody let Rhaegar win? Because, he's the coolest man in the room. we can't humiliate him. He's the prince, the crown prince. Anyway, at this point, dear listener, final section of this rambling commentary, I would like to fill this narrative with some missing bits, both from Mira's story and from other, it's bits and pieces of this backstory that we learned from other characters. And I will give you the official narrative, and then the current theories held by most readers and quasi-semi-canon. Because at the end, King Aerys. Okay, first of all, there's one thing at a time. Aerys was at the tourney, not so much because he was, eager to enjoy a good old tourney after spending years in King's Landing, living as a recluse a la Howard Hughes. He was there because Varys had warned him of a possible plot. We don't know how real that plot actually was, led by his son Rhaegar to dethrone him, since, Aerys had become increasingly insane. So Aerys said to himself, "Over my dead body." Yeah, how'd you like that? "Over my dead body." He must have sounded like that, I imagine. And he packed his bags to attend the tourney without a shave or a shower. Let's just rush to the tourney. To the point that everyone at Harrenhal was like, "Oh my God, look at the king. Look at that. Look at King Aerys." Nah, is that the king? I thought it was a bum off the streets, occupying, the seats usually reserved to royalty. I was just looking forward to seeing the security kick him out. So yeah. So after the 3 victories scored by the Knight of the Laughing Tree, Aerys went a bit mad. Surprise, surprise. And ordered that the mysterious knight be brought to him. So he dispatched his son Rhaegar to go and find him. But Rhaegar came back empty-handed, claiming that all that was left of the knight was the shield left abandoned, by a tree. And according to a fan theory, Rhaegar did find the knight, realized it was none other than Lyanna Stark, and said to her, "Hey, you're kind of awesome. Yeah, you're kind of awesome. Okay, I'll tell you what, I'll tell my dad I didn't see you because I fancy you, Starky. So if you fancy committing adultery with me at some point in the future, just swipe right and we're in business. I'll come get you. You'll see. In fact, before the day is over, I'll give you some concrete evidence of just how much I fancy you." And the concrete evidence consisted in this. Upon being declared champion of the tourney, he chose Lyanna Stark as the new Queen of Love and Beauty, like there's always a Queen of Love and Beauty in every tourney, by placing a crown of blue winter roses in Lyanna Stark's lap. At which point, I forgot where I read this, all laughters died. I think it was in, the World of Ice and Fire. I forgot. It's a good quote. It gives you the idea of what happened, because everybody cringed. Because Rhaegar basically snubbed Elia Martell, his own wife, publicly, which of course pissed off the Martells from Dorne. And as for Robert Baratheon, betrothed to Lyanna Stark, he was said to have taken the whole thing in good spirit. As in, of course Lyanna was crowned Miss Tourney. Why, she's the most beautiful woman in miles. And according to other versions, Robert was actually pissed off. He was actually bitter about that cringe-worthy moment, to the point that you, dear listener, could say that the seed of the Baratheon rebellion was planted there and then. Also, let me read from the World of Ice and Fire, which I got here. Brandon Stark, the heir to Winterfell, had to be restrained from confronting Rhaegar for what he took as a slight upon his sister's honor. Yeah, so there's that. However, while the official narrative that characters agree to each other over and over again until they believe it's true, to quote Littlefinger, the official narrative was that Robert and Lyanna were meant to be together, it's like two peas in a pond. It's a match made in heaven. But a version closer to the true is that the truth is that Lyanna had a massive case of cold feet, and as Robert, didn't quite strike her as the faithful type. And because she was too restless herself. And, in that same chapter, Eddard 6, that I just mentioned earlier, Ned does tell Robert, look, mate, you think you knew Lyanna, but no, you idealize her. Trust me, you didn't know the first thing about her. I don't know, there are so many elements that point out to Lyanna wanted to break up with Robert. Robert never found out because she was dead. By the time, towards the end of the Baratheon rebellion. So anyway, fast forward. Yeah, let's tie all loose ends here. Fast forward to a year later, and winter was back. I told you it was a false spring, and Rhaegar, quote unquote, kidnapped, abducted Lyanna and took her with him to have a bit of the old hanky-panky. And according to what is basically an official theory, they even got married, Vegas style, and conceived a son. And this son is none other than Jon Snow. I mean, I don't count all that as spoilers, because all this isn't officially confirmed in any of the published books. So you may choose to dismiss it, as indeed I did for a long time. Yeah, but more like, covering my ears and go, no, la, la, la. Don't know why I had that reaction initially. So, no, this is too much. Just when you hear those conspiracy theories, and then eventually then they eventually become fact, and you go, oh, okay, right. So anyway, you may choose to dismiss it. All we do know from the published novels is in a Game of Thrones, Eddard 15, as I said, the last Eddard chapter, which cleverly George R. Martin, seeking plausible deniability, gives us. It's a flashback which he gives us as a raving dream. So he might always deny, look, I never said things went down that way because Ned was on drugs, milk of the old poppy. He does that. He does that. Like Jaime has a dream, remembering, the day he, what did he do? He's slain the last end of the king. He's slain King Aerys, for one thing. And then he kept the throne warm for whoever walked into the throne room. Anyway, so he remembers Eddard 15. Go back, reread, go pick it up from your shelf, dear listener, and you'll find Eddard 15, last Eddard chapter. He describes it. He describes the whole thing. 7 Northmen headed to the Tower of Joy in Dorne to get Lyanna Stark back. This was towards the end of the Baratheon rebellion. And I'm going to read here from the Wiki of Ice and Fire. They found the tower guarded by 3 members of the Kingsguard, Sir Arthur Dane, obviously, Sir Oswell Whent, some relation surely to Harrenhal, Harrenhal's landlord, and Lord Commander Gerald Hightower. Is that Old Town? Yeah, that sounds about right. Eddard and Howland were the only survivors of the resulting battle. According to a semi-canon source, this is still on the Wiki of Ice and Fire, Lyanna Stark was found dying inside the tower by her brother Eddard after the fight, because she died in childbirth, you see. So we've come full circle with this Eddard Howland friendship, and I decided I didn't want to give you the whole thing, the whole flashback of what kickstarted the Baratheon rebellion, including Brandon and Rickon, Ned's father and brother, respectively, going to confronting King Aerys in the throne room and being cooked in their own armor. That's gruesome. A thing that... So they went to confront him, said, "Oi, what's going on here? Where's our sister? Your son kidnapped her." And Aerys, by then he was already gone, mad and mad with power, which is, Have you ever tried to go mad without power? You're boring. No one listens to you. This is a quote from The Simpsons. Anyway, they cooked them in their own armor, which is gruesome, and Jamie was forced to watch and avert his eyes because, member of the King's Guards, not supposed to judge, only protect. I said I was going to skip that bloody passage, and then I pretty much spelled it all out to you. But anyway, dear listener, thank you for your patience. And so in the Tower of Joy, and it's never been clear why these three knights defended the Tower of Joy. They knew that, this had already happened at the end of Robert's rebellion. Prince Rhaegar, having been killed by Robert in the Trident, which I guess must have given Robert some kind of closure. So what was the point of, defending the tower from any... Why were the three members of the Kingsguard there defending the tower? The war was lost. And officially they were on Robert's payroll. Well, it was an interim government at the time. Aerys had already been stabbed in the back by Jamie, so there. Anyway, so you know what? This is so complicated. We could have we could discuss all the ins and outs until the cows come home, which I would love to actually. Yeah, drop a comment if you're not too busy, dear listener. In the meantime, I would rather not end this commentary on such gruesome notes. Brandon, Rickon, Rhaegar, always all dying gruesome deaths. So let's close with Bran ruminating about the story of the Knight of the Laughing Tree and thinking to himself, he's thinking, maybe one day I will also travel to the Isle of Faces, spend some time with the green men, and who knows, they might heal me and turn me into a knight as well. Oh, everybody go, oh, yeah. So yeah, that, my dear listener, is the end of Bran II from A Storm of Swords. What a fun, classic chapter. And, thank you for following me thus far. Next chapter, feel free to go straight to the next Bran chapter if you want to. Feel free to go to the next chapter, Davos 3, I believe. Feel free to rewind and go and listen to some preview chapter commentaries, or indeed, if you enjoy this kind of content, feel free to do the things that people do under such circumstances, or feel free not to do any of the above. However it is, I know I'll be here again for the next chapter, and I'm looking forward to that because it's a fun chapter, that one. So in the meantime, all the best to you, and ciao, bye.